Britain and the world say a final goodbye to Queen Elizabeth. Her funeral drawing kings, princes, prime ministers, and thousands of people who crowded the streets of London to honor the monarch whose 70-year reign defined an age. Sedatives in the hands of first responders. Aurora lawmakers are looking to address the issue and possibly make some big changes following the death of Elijah McClain. And picking up the pieces that are left. People from an Aurora apartment complex finally allowed to get their belongings more than a week after an explosion, but some finding thieves have already gotten to their property. We begin this morning with a live look at Windsor Castle, about 20 miles outside London. It's here behind those walls where Queen Elizabeth II was laid to rest next to her husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. The private ceremony will conclude a special morning of memorial events across London. This was the scene earlier as a slow, stately procession carried Queen Elizabeth II's coffin from Westminster Abbey to Wellington Arch, the old entrance to Buckingham Palace. Her children followed behind. Britain's longest reigning monarch died September 8th at Balmoral Castle in Scotland at the age of 96. She sat on the throne for 7 decades. In the days following her death, thousands across the UK mourned her by visiting her coffin in Edinburgh and in London. Among those on hand today, President Joe Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden.
All the people in the United Kingdom, our hearts go out to you, and you were fortunate to have had her for 70 years. We all were.
Analysts are already calling this the most watched event in TV history, with an estimated 4 billion having watched around the globe. ABC's Faith Abube has a look at some of the top moments.
This morning, Britain's new King and Queen Consort meeting with members of Parliament at Westminster Hall.
I am deeply grateful for the addresses of condolence by the House of Lords and the House of Commons. As Shakespeare says of the earlier Queen Elizabeth, she was a pattern to all princes living.
The King and Queen arriving in Edinburgh, where the King participated in the ceremony of keys, followed by a 21-gun salute from Edinburgh Castle. Joining other members of the royal family for a procession to St. Giles Cathedral, where the Queen's coffin will lie in rest to allow the people of Scotland to pay their respects. The Queen's final journey beginning on Sunday, her casket draped in the Scottish royal standard, adorned with a wreath of her favorite flowers, leaving her beloved Balmoral estate and taking the long road towards Edinburgh.
Just important to say goodbye. She's been on the throne for a long time. Yeah, it means a lot. Sorry.
Across the Scottish countryside, thousands lining the way to say goodbye.
She loved Ballater, she loved Royal Deeside, and we loved her as well.
Some even throwing flowers as the hearse drove by. In some places, farmers showing up with an honor guard of tractors. Later down the road, a dozen horses paying tribute to the Queen, an equestrian in her younger years. And in Edinburgh, this final leg of the procession eventually met by members of the Royal Regiment of Scotland.
We're part of history standing here.
Some of the Queen's children greeting the coffin in silence, Princess Anne giving a curtsy.
And the Queen will lie in state in London for 4 days starting on Wednesday. Members of the public are being warned to expect long lines and security checks, and visitors are also being asked to dress appropriately and stay silent once they're inside Westminster Hall. Inez de la Quatera, ABC News, London.
We have some breaking news this morning. The Boulder County Coroner's Office has identified the 3 people who died in a mid-air plane crash Saturday morning. They are 22-year-old Daniel Wilmoth, 23-year-old Samuel Fisher, and 69-year-old Henry Butler. The crash happened right behind Sean Tuft's Longmont home. Yesterday, crews carefully picked up the pieces of what was left of one of those planes. The area is still closed off by police tape. The NTSB is still investigating what caused that collision. Already displaced, now victims of theft, the first families finally able to move out of their apartments damaged by an explosion more than a week ago, but some weren't happy to find what they found or didn't find left behind. Denver 7's Christian Lopez talking with them as they pack up. Christian, just a tough situation all around here.
It really is. Not only were these families displaced after that explosion, some of them were also victims of theft after reports of people breaking into the empty building. That explosion happened 9 days ago, and shortly after that, victims realized that there had been holes in the doors and some of their items had been ransacked or even stolen. This morning, we talked to police officers who were in the area who told us that they've been keeping a close eye on the building to prevent that from happening again. Hundreds of people have been staying in hotel rooms after being displaced, but today they are starting to come back and begin that moving process. We did talk to one man who was here, and he said despite everything he's gone through, he is still in good spirits.
I would much rather stress about trying to find somewhere to live than planning a funeral. And so for those who are going through it, and are upset and whatnot, just keep our heads up, and be blessed that we have the opportunity to at least figure things out versus it being the complete opposite.
A powerful message to his neighbors who are going through these difficult times. 25 units will be moved out today. Each unit will also get $1,000 to help with relocating. We are live in Aurora this morning. I'm Christian Lopez, Denver 7.
Christian, thank you. Also in Aurora, big changes could be coming to the city of Aurora when it comes to first responders and their use of sedatives. City lawmakers will consider a proposal to keep paramedics from using a drug to replace ketamine. As Denver 7's Veronica Acosta reports, it's a move sparked by the death of Elijah McClain.
Aurora Council member Curtis Gardner says sedatives have no place in the hands of Aurora paramedics. That's exactly why he's introducing this ban during a study session that's happening today. The resolution Gardner is introducing would ban sedatives for 3 years. This is beyond what's already being used as of December 31st of last year. This means that if this resolution is passed, Aurora City Manager would have to have Aurora Fire Rescue refrain from adding any new sedatives to its emergency medical services protocols for that 3-year period. This comes after the medical director who oversees AFR's program said just last month he'd be introducing droperidol to paramedics' kits. That's a fast-acting sedative that works as a tranquilizer. It'd be used in situations when ketamine was used before it was banned. Gardner told Denver 7 he has multiple concerns about sedatives in Aurora. One of those stemmed from the death of Elijah McClain.
I think first, concerns about civil liberties, about injecting a sedative into somebody without their permission. But I think the bigger issue I have is we have firefighters currently indicted for murder charges for administering a sedative, ketamine, that was previously in our medical protocols. And I just don't understand why we would take the risk of introducing an additional sedative while those charges are still pending.
If this is approved by the majority of City Council, that ban would go into effect immediately. We'll keep you updated on what happens. In Aurora, I'm Veronica Acosta, Denver 7.
President Joe Biden says he believes the COVID-19 pandemic is over. He made the announcement during an interview on 60 Minutes. The U.S. government still designates COVID-19 a public health emergency, and the World Health Organization says it remains a public health emergency of international concern. The president was criticized for making a similar assertion last year before the Omicron surge. Well, it was an ugly win, but it was Russell Wilson's first win as a Bronco and Nathaniel Hackett's first win as a head coach. Clearly, the Broncos have some kinks to iron out before hosting San Francisco on Sunday night. Here's Denver 7 Sports Director Lionel Bienvenu.
Welcome to Denver 7 Sports. And you know there's always good news and bad news in every game, right? Win or lose. The good news here is the Broncos won their home opener over the Texans. The bad news is most of the problems from last Monday's mess in Seattle, they were still there Sunday at Empower Field. The penalties, the red zone, dead zone, the mind-boggling and inexplicable coaching decisions by Nathaniel Hackett. But the Broncos overcame all that to get the win, so as ugly as it was, we'll take it for now. Russell Wilson running out onto the field, the sold-out crowd gave him an orange and blue welcome. Everybody ready to forget the sadness in Seattle and get that first win of the season here at home. And 31 for the Broncos. This was a good example of what I'm talking about. Javonte Williams averaging over 6 yards a carry. They called an option with tight end Andrew Beck. They lost a yard, 4th and 2. So Hackett sent the field goal team in. They ran out of time, a delay of game penalty, so they decided to punt. You could hear people screaming at the TV, "What are you doing? The boo's coming down. Fans are not having it." This is bad coaching on a high school level. It's embarrassing. It did get better. Russ, 4th quarter, led a drive, capped it with a 22-yard touchdown pass. Eric Saubert caught it, and the Broncos won at 16-9. After, the coach and the quarterback talked about the win, the fans, and the boos.
I mean, heck, I was booing myself. I was getting very frustrated. Get down to the red zone 2 times, don't get another touchdown, which is unbelievably frustrating. I don't think we've scored in there yet, and that's something that all of our guys got to step it up.
This was exciting for me to play here. I've played against the Denver Broncos before here. It was a crazy crowd to hear all the incompletes, that they're doing on the defense and everything else. But it was a special time to play here, and obviously to get our win. All I really care about is the cheers at the end, because we won.
Yep, cheers at the end, and Russell danced around the boos in the second quarter, understandably. But they won. The question is, can the problems be fixed? 25 penalties in 2 games, slow, awkward play calling, clumsy, costly coaching decisions. We'll see what happens this week. The Broncos play the 49ers next Sunday night, prime time, at Empower Field at Mile High. We'll, of course, have the latest on the Broncos coming up later right here on Denver 7 Sports, and we'll see you then.
But before we get to week 3, we got to wrap up week 2, and we do so right here. Denver 7 is your home for Monday Night Football tonight. The Minnesota Vikings take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Kickoff set for 6:30. Well, a popular county park in Boulder County is closing so people can hunt in it. When the closures kick in and what hunters will be gunning for. And over 1 million people are without power in Puerto Rico as Hurricane Fiona moves into the Atlantic. A check on some of the damage after some rivers rose more than 10 feet in an hour.